Dolphins fans, what's going on today? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. Day 8 of training camp is officially in the books here on Friday, early afternoon. It's Tua Tagovailoa wearing the team's orange jersey on Friday's practice, the first time he got the orange jersey, if you count all of OTA's mini camp and training camp. So good to see him. My boy 17, that was my prediction for yesterday. He did not get it after that stellar day that he had with Tua. Regardless, you had to think if it was going offense, it was going to one of those guys. But unfortunately for Tua and the offense, Friday was probably deemed a win for the defense as they responded pretty positively after one of the offense's best days of practice. Dolphins fans, we're going to jump into all the action in a second. We've got a couple of highlight videos that we're going to get to. We got some players that were noted during Friday's practice that we're going to get to. We're going to talk real quick as well in the beginning about that new motion rule as well. We will chat about that. But first, I want to hear from you. Your thoughts on Dolphins training camp. Any questions you may have, go ahead, drop them in the comments. Let's carry on the conversation there. Real quick before we jump in, like I said, let's talk about that motion rule because it was put out like Tyreek Hill and the exit or the cheat motion. Essentially, like if he's starting in the slot, or sometimes he would line up behind like the tackle or the tight end and then cheat out to the outside before he would start his route. There was some potential modifications to that rule that people were talking about and whether or not the Dolphins were going to be flagged for that moving forward. And obviously last season, that became a pretty big staple of our offense, just using that as a way to line up a little bit differently, get your wide receivers moving in motion before the snap ended up starting. However, this is what I have been told. Players can be in motion, but they cannot turn upfield until the ball is snapped. And that's actually always been the rule. But the refs in the NFL are being instructed to watch this very closely. Tyreek Hill got away with this a few times last year. However, he never ended up getting flagged about it. So essentially, as long as Tyreek doesn't end up moving up forward, which, man, it looked like he was doing that quite often last year, nothing should really change. So like I said, I will talk more about that if I get an update on that news or if more comes out of it for right now. But as of today, doesn't sound like it's going to be a huge detriment to our offense. We're not going to have to change up too much. Just going to be very careful that when you do your exit motion, if you're moving, you got to be going sideways. You cannot be turning upfield. All right, we talked enough about the rules. Like I mentioned, though, in today's practice, Tua was wearing the orange jersey. We've talked about the offensive line and having some issues, obviously, in training camp for the last, decade? But at one point, Tua actually specifically went over and talked to the offensive line before a new set of 11-on-11 action that was coming up. And like I said, miscommunication with the offensive line, some lack of protection stuff. The offense just wasn't nearly as crisp on Friday as it was on Thursday. As like you said, the defense really made it a point to respond positively today. We'll have more Tua notes. We'll have some more quarterback notes sprinkled in with the wide receivers as well. But if we're going through some position stuff, De'Von Achane was noted for a drop from Tua. We're going to have to clean that up, especially if we're looking for De'Von Achane to make a little bit of noise in the receiving game this year. I know it's only one drop, but at the end of the day, I know we had one or two last year as well. We're just something that you're going to have to clean up if we're going to want to get him going on the receiving end. Once again, Travis Wingfield noted Jaylen Wright started out a little bit slower in camp. Looks like he's really been turning it on. Made it to the second level on a run. Ended up dropping the shoulder at the end of it too, welcoming a little bit of contact. So that's obviously nice to see. But he made it a point to say that he is hitting that hole with conviction recently. And I know I sound like a broken record on that. But the nice thing is, if you've been following the Fins Up Network, it sounds like the coaching that he's been getting and the advice that he's been giving and the instructions for hitting that hole in the zone blocking scheme has really landed with him, and he's made some nice progress in that department. A name that we haven't been able to talk too much about in training camp so far, it's fullback. It's Alec Ingold, so you're not going to get a note every single day. But he actually picked up a 3rd and short situational play on a pass from Tua as well. I should have looked back. There was a comment in yesterday's video about whether or not the offense has looked better in some of these 3rd and 4th and short situations, because we had our struggles last year, abandoning the run game in some of those situations last year. And I responded to the comment saying that it's been a little bit of a mix. I think there was a sack that Skylar Thompson took in Thursday's practice in one of these situations. But then you get an example like today where we're picking this up. And I've actually been told it might not be every short yardage situation, but the Dolphins even have a package where we already have Alec Ingold picking up this one. There's a formation that they have as well with Jonnu Smith that's going to be lining up in the backfield. And we've already seen him get a couple of carries in training camp as well. So just something to keep your eye on. But yeah, some mixed results in those short yardage situations, but Alec Ingold picks one up today. My apologies if there was any jumpiness in your video there. I had to hit pause real quick, but I was moving on to the wide receivers in Friday's practice where Jaylen Waddle, we got video of this one, picked up about 20 on a completion from Tua in between defenders. Like I said, we've got some video. I'll show it a couple of times here. Gives a little bit of a run fake, pulls back. Nice catch and run there by Jaylen Waddle. Like I said, we'll show that one once more real quick. Nice find there over to Waddle in between a few defenders. Regardless, like I said, awesome practice yesterday, following up with a couple of nice plays here today. Also noted for a catch along the sideline where he ended up juking out two defenders to pick up some extra yards after the catch as well. Braylon Sanders, who a very under the radar wide receiver. I don't even know if I want to call him a competitor in this battle at wide receiver, but because of Eric Ezukanma being injured, Taj Washington being shelved, Odell Beckham Jr. being still on the PUP list, making the most of his opportunities, caught an intermediate pass from Mike White today. He had some nice reps in some one-on-one drills as well. He caught one along the sideline on a deep touchdown. I believe it was a touchdown from Tua Tagovailoa. Noted for a solid week overall. Like I said, the way that he's been showing up, making plays, especially in the absence of others, maybe he doesn't end up making this team's 53-man roster. I'd still probably bet on that side of it today. Maybe once again a practice squad type of stash this year. But speaking of one of those rookie wide receivers, Malik Washington, called out for bringing in at least 3 passes by my count today during team drills. Nice to see his name popping up in the report both yesterday and today. Just a couple of days after we talked about him getting talked to a little bit by Wes Welker. If you missed that conversation, go back to Thursday's practice recap. I brought that up, this idea of Malik Washington maybe playing a little bit too much in his head, not going out there and just letting his natural athleticism playing over, the team being maybe a little bit displeased with how much he's thinking, not coming out of his breaks clean and everything, and it just kind of slowing down his ability as a natural receiver, as a natural athlete. So nice to see him take that coaching, kind of like what we saw with Jaylen Wright, ends up getting your name popped up in the practice report just days later. Moving on to the tight ends, Jonnu Smith caught a quick hitter over the middle from Skylar Thompson with room to run after the catch. Also caught one from Tua Tagovailoa on a play where Tua was facing pressure for a medium game. I tell you what, after all the reports, I mean, we've seen good reports from Tanner Connor, Jody Fortson, Jonnu Smith, Julian Hill yesterday with the 35-yard touchdown. I feel safe in saying that the position of tight end will not be snubbed in 2024. They are going to find the end zone in 2024. Bold claim, right, Ben? Moving on to the offensive line, Travis Wingfield singled out Robert Jones in a tweet today as well. He went into some fundamental, some technique stuff with Jones that he actually excels at. But why I bring this up is because of that unknown at both left and right guard here as we just had the Hall of Fame game last night. So yeah, we're getting into preseason action. Regular season's right around the corner. And like we've talked about, I don't know that he's necessarily going to start in week 1, but I'd say that he's likely in this mix at some level just because of how things are right now with Isaiah Wynn still being on the PUP. We haven't seen from him in training camp the last week, however many practices, through 8 practices. You still got Eichenberg, you still got Jack Driscoll that are battling it out at right guard, but it's not like one of those guys is really dominating and saying, you know what, this is my position. So regardless, I think it's safe to say that we may need to count on a guy like Robert Jones for meaningful snaps at some point during this season. So keep your eye on him as well. Andrew Meyer noted for the lone bad snap of practice. Not good that it happened, but a significant improvement in that department in the last 2 practices compared to the first part of training camp. Austin Jackson, noted for putting Chop Robinson on the ground during team drills. However, Austin Jackson was also noted for giving up a sack to Jonathan Harris. Patrick Paul and Julian Hill, noted for nice blocks on a 10-yard run by Jeff Wilson as well. As we transition here to the defense, I wanted to say that the refs were once again in attendance at Miami Dolphins practice. 5 defensive offsides calls alone. Some other pass interference calls mixed in as well. Omar Kelly noted at least 9 flags thrown on the day in total. So damn near double digits if it wasn't. Got to improve on that department. And I say that because I saw a stat where I believe the Miami Dolphins were either first. If they weren't first, they were in like the top 2 or 3 in amount of yards lost last year due to flags, due to penalty plays that ended up getting called back because of a penalty, whether it was a holding, whether it ends up being a shift, whatever type of play. Miami lost out on so many yards last year. That's something that we need to clean up. One thing I wanted to really bring up today as well, like I said, transitioning to the defensive side of the ball. Omar Kelly went as far to say that Quentin Bell, one of the standouts in training camp so far, is your Miami Dolphins starting edge player, at least as of today. Now, keep in mind that's considering there's injuries right now to Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but solid praise from an unexpected guy having a solid training camp so far. And I will admit that I didn't do enough homework on Quentin Bell leading up to training camp. And fortunately, he's made me regret that decision. So use it as a learning opportunity. I was surprised to learn he is 28 years old. He's appeared in a combination of 9 games, like a handful in 2020 and a handful, like a Jason Pierre-Paul handful in 2022. So 9 career games at 28 years old. He actually played wide receiver for 3 years in college, and he is an absolute freak of an athlete. He ran in the 4.3s coming out of the college. His vertical was over 40 inches. So yeah, going from wide receiver, moving to linebacker, obviously a transition of that nature, that widespread difference, that was always going to be a progress. So I'm just glad that things seem to be clicking a little bit right now while we have him. And I don't want to go crazy because it is only training camp. We've only seen him in pads a couple of times. He's not going against this overwhelming offensive line. But this is 100% a guy to continue to monitor during training camp when you're watching the preseason games. Keep your eye out for Quentin Bell and make a decision for yourself when he's going against other teams as well. A shout out to one of our rookies here, Mo Kamara. Got his name called for some nice edge setting early in practice. Later, Keon Smith was called for a holding play, another flag, where Mo Kamara beat him on the play. Chop Robinson also noted for applying pressure to the quarterback a couple of times today as well. We'll wrap things up in the secondary. We got one more video here as well. Jevon Holland forced a fumble on a Raheem Mostert run. Nice little run by Mostert, and maybe he thought the play was kind of over at that point because he gets a little bit of a pop from Holland there. Defense recovers the fumble. I'll show it one more time here as well. Couple nice blocks. Nice hit in the hole. But hey, Holland stays with it, plays until the whistle, ends up forcing the fumble. So a little bit of good from Mostert. Some obviously bad, some protection issues there from Mostert, but good by Jevon Holland as well. Cornerbacks Kendall Fuller and Jalen Ramsey given quite a bit of praise by numerous reporters for hanging with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle early in practice. Like we said, the offense wasn't full-fledged, crushing it today, and that goes to show a lot. Great performance there by Kendall Fuller and Jalen Ramsey being able to lock those top 2 guys. Ramsey also teamed up with David Long to blow up an outside run by Raheem Mostert. Like I said, solid day all around by Ramsey and the Dolphins defense. Elijah Campbell, heard his name quite a few times as well recently. He actually dropped an interception on a pass from Tua where Tua was facing pressure from Ramsey. Like I said, Campbell continues to find his way into these training camp reports, and it was noted that when Jalen Ramsey's number has been called on these blitzes, there isn't anyone that's getting there faster. He is getting home quick, and that just shows his versatility at the position. Remember, even during the draft process, it was, man, this guy can play anywhere. He can play boundary. He can play slot. You could move him back to safety. Use him wherever you want to. And that's what we're kind of hoping, that some of these other guys can emerge in the secondary. Let Anthony Weaver, let this guy play to his strengths. Because if you can get this guy coming on blitzes and he's getting home the way that he has during training camp, chef's kiss to the defense right there. Nick Needham was given props for a diving pass breakup near the end of practice. And then Ethan Bonner actually came down with an interception on a throw from Tua on a play that essentially ended practice. It sounds like the play may have resulted in a sack. They continued the play on. Tua basically throws up a heave, kind of a Hail Mary style, just to try to get a completion, and Ethan Bonner came down with it. Two last notes. Patrick McMorris intercepted a tip Mike White pass. However, that was wiped out due to a pass interference call. Once again, flagged, wiping out a big play. And Saran Neal blew up a pitch play on a Chris Brooks run for a tackle for a loss. That is what we've got for today, Dolphins fans. They would actually return to the practice field for their scrimmage on Saturday. It sounds like there may be some weather in the forecast to keep an eye on, so we'll see how all of that plays out. We will wrap it there for today, but like I said, drop any thoughts you've got from practice, any thoughts on the whole motion ruling and everything, any questions that you may have, go ahead, drop them in the comments. We'll be back tomorrow. Like I said, we'll see how that weather plays out. That may factor into a couple of things, but outside of that, we will call it for today. Thank you once again, Miami Dolphins fans, and until next time, fins up.